Airports are places of transit, where people come and go every day, but for one man, an airport became home. Mehran Karimi Nasseri lived in Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris for 18 years, with no country to call his own, no papers to prove his identity. He existed in a state of permanent limbo, wandering terminals, sleeping on benches, and surviving day by day. His story is strange, tragic, and extraordinary, and it is the story that inspired the movie The Terminal. Mehran Karimi Nasseri was born in 1945 in Masjid Soleiman, Iran, to an Iranian father and a British mother, a fact that would later complicate his nationality. As a young man, he was intelligent, ambitious, and fascinated by Western culture. He studied law at the University of Bradford in England, hoping to build a life that crossed borders, a symbol of unity between cultures. But the 1970s were a turbulent time in Iran. Political unrest was spreading fast. The monarchy was collapsing, dissidents were being targeted. When Mehran spoke out against the Shah, he was reportedly expelled from Iran. Stripped of his citizenship, he became stateless, a man with nowhere to go. From that moment on, his journey became one long search for a home he would never truly find. After years of wandering through Europe, Mehran finally found hope in Belgium, where the United Nations granted him refugee status. Those papers were his ticket to freedom, legal proof of his identity. But then tragedy struck. On a train traveling to Paris, his documents were reportedly lost or stolen. Without them, he was a man without a name, a nationality, or rights. When he arrived at Charles de Gaulle Airport in 1988, French authorities refused him entry, and without valid papers, he couldn't leave the terminal either. Mehran was stuck. What was supposed to be a short layover became an 18-year stay in Terminal 1, a prison without walls, governed not by bars but by bureaucracy. Charles de Gaulle Airport is one of the busiest in the world, a maze of glass, concrete, and constant motion. Every day, thousands of people pass through its terminals, rushing for flights, dragging luggage, meeting loved ones. In the middle of it all was Mehran, sitting on a red bench with a shopping cart full of his belongings. He shaved in public restrooms, ate meals given to him by travelers, washed up in airport sinks. For the staff, he became a familiar sight, polite, quiet, always surrounded by piles of newspapers and notes. Some employees brought him food or coffee, others slipped him coins or blankets. Over time, he became part of the airport's strange ecosystem, a man who existed everywhere and nowhere at once. The reason Mehran couldn't leave was simple and tragic. Without a recognized passport, he couldn't legally enter France. He couldn't return to Iran. He no longer had Iranian citizenship, and no other country wanted to accept him without documents. He became trapped in a bureaucratic black hole, invisible to the legal world. France couldn't deport him, other nations couldn't claim him. He simply existed, a ghost within the system. The ultimate irony, at any moment he could have stepped outside the airport's doors, but the moment he did, he would have been arrested for illegal entry. So he stayed, for 18 years. Inside the terminal, Mehran built a fragile routine. He washed, shaved, and sorted papers, fragments of a life left behind. He read, wrote, and spoke to passing strangers. The airport became his neighborhood, the staff his family. Yet every departing flight reminded him the world was moving on and he could not. By the 1990s, the world noticed. Reporters came, articles were written, and documentaries filmed. He called himself Sir Alfred Mehran, a name of rebirth and endurance. His life fascinated the public, absurd yet deeply human. Then Hollywood arrived. In 2004, Steven Spielberg released The Terminal starring Tom Hanks, loosely inspired by Mehran's story. But unlike the movie's hopeful tone, the real man's story was tragic. Not a quirky accident, but a lifelong sentence inside glass walls. After more than a decade, in 1999, France granted him legal residency. He could finally leave, but he didn't. Years of isolation had changed him. The terminal had become his home, his identity. The outside world felt foreign, even frightening. Psychologists called it institutionalization, when captivity becomes comfort. To Mehran, freedom no longer felt real. He was a man bound not by walls but by habit and fear. Eventually, in 2006, Mehran's health began to fail. Airport staff called for medical assistance and he was taken to a hospital near Paris. He never returned to live in the terminal. After recovering, he spent time in shelters and hostels, still clinging to his old folders and belongings, remnants of a life spent waiting. For the next decade, he lived quietly, away from the media, though his story continued to inspire books, essays, and debates about statelessness and human rights. In November 2022, Mehran Karimi Nasseri passed away in Charles de Gaulle Airport, the same place where his life story began and ended. He never belonged to any nation, yet he belonged everywhere people passed through. The airport was his kingdom and his cage. He lived in a place built for departures and stayed for 18 years. Some called it fate, others tragedy. But one truth remains. The man who waited forever turned an airport into a symbol of both survival and sorrow. So next time you're in an airport, look around. For most, it's a stop between destinations. But for one man, it was the destination itself. And somewhere, hidden among the crowds, you might just wonder, could someone else be living their own terminal story right now?